They
The
are
sun
coming,
was
Captain.
low in the
This
sky
proves
when
it.
Daniel
We have
finished
to
his
mobilize
long
the
day of work.
defenses now.
He lived
It's
on the
not that
quiet
simple.
edge of a
The
human
council
settlement,
won't approve it.
a small town built on a distant alien world. His home was simple, a small wooden house with a metal roof, a tiny garden, and a squeaky front door that always opened with a groan. Daniel lived alone, and he was used to the silence that greeted him each evening. But today, when he walked toward his house, he noticed something strange. A small transport vehicle from the local authorities was parked near his gate. Its lights blinked softly in the fading light. Daniel frowned, confused. He had done nothing wrong. He paid his taxes, followed the rules, and kept to himself. So, why were the authorities here? As he stepped closer, the vehicle door opened with a hiss. A tall alien officer stepped out, his green skin shining slightly, his uniform stiff and neat. In his hand, he held a small digital file. But what caught Daniel's attention was not the officer, it was the small figure standing behind him. A young alien girl, thin and quiet, peered out from behind the officer's leg. She had pale purple skin and large silver eyes that shimmered like liquid metal. She looked scared, hugging a small cloth bag to her chest. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old, by human years. "Daniel Hayes?" the officer asked in a firm voice. "Yes," Daniel replied slowly. "That's me." "We have an assignment order for you," the officer said, handing him the digital file. "This girl, her name is Lyra, has been placed under your temporary care by the local council. Effective immediately." Daniel blinked in shock. "Under my care? Wait, I didn't request anything. I don't even know her." The officer nodded stiffly. "The council selected you based on your clean record, stable home environment, and low-risk profile. The girl needs placement. You are suitable." Daniel stared at the digital file, then at the girl. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She only held her bag tighter and kept her eyes on the ground. "Is she in trouble?" Daniel asked. "No," the officer replied quickly. "She is simply without guardians. Circumstances forced us to relocate her. She requires a safe place to stay. You have been chosen. The council thanks you in advance." Daniel felt a knot form in his stomach. He wasn't prepared for this. He lived quietly. He worked long hours. He barely took care of himself. How could he take care of a frightened alien girl? Before he could speak again, the officer placed a hand on the girl's shoulder and gently nudged her forward. She stepped toward Daniel, her small feet hardly making a sound on the stone path. "This is Lyra," the officer said. "She has basic training in common language. She understands commands but may not speak much. Be patient with her." Lyra finally lifted her head. Her silver eyes met Daniel's for a brief moment. In that tiny moment, he saw her fear, cold, deep fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of being unwanted. Fear of being sent somewhere even worse. Daniel felt something shift inside him. The officer saluted, turned, and stepped back into the vehicle. "We will check on her placement in 2 days. Good evening." The vehicle rose into the air and disappeared into the darkening sky, leaving Daniel standing alone with the girl. The quiet felt heavier than usual. After a long moment, Daniel spoke softly. Hello." The girl didn't answer. She only held her bag closer. Daniel cleared his throat and tried again, this time with a small smile. "My name is Daniel. You can come inside. It's getting cold." She hesitated, looking at the door, then at him. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her movements were careful, almost frightened, as if she expected him to shout or push her away. He didn't. He opened the squeaky door and stepped aside so she could enter first. She walked in with tiny, quiet footsteps and stopped in the middle of the room, unsure of what to do. Daniel closed the door gently so it wouldn't startle her. "You can put your bag down if you want," he said softly. She didn't speak, but she placed the bag on the floor with slow, careful hands. Her silver eyes studied the small home, the table, the chair, the old couch, the dim lamp in the corner. "Are you hungry?" Daniel asked. Again, she hesitated then nodded once. Daniel warmed some leftover soup on the stove. The smell filled the house, warm and comforting. When he placed the bowl on the table, Lyra walked toward it slowly, as if waiting for permission. He nodded, and she sat down gently. She ate quietly, each spoonful small and polite, as if she didn't want to appear greedy. Daniel watched from across the table, thinking how strange it was that a tiny, scared alien girl was suddenly sitting in his home, assigned to him by the government. When she finished eating, Daniel showed her the small guest room that had not been used in years. The bed was old but clean. She stood in the doorway, staring at it with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe she had a room of her own. "This will be your room," Daniel said softly. "You can rest. You're safe here." Lyra looked at him again, this time longer. Her eyes softened just a little. Then she whispered her first word. "Thank you." It was quiet, broken, but real. And Daniel knew, in that moment, that everything in his life had just changed. Lyra stood in the small guest room, holding her cloth bag tightly against her chest. Daniel watched her from the doorway, unsure what to say or how to make her feel comfortable. He had never taken care of anyone before, much less a young alien girl who had suddenly been assigned to him without warning. The room was quiet. Dust floated in the soft glow of the lamp. The bed's blanket was neatly folded, and a tiny wooden dresser sat in the corner. Everything looked simple, old, and a little worn, just like the rest of Daniel's home. "You can sleep here tonight," Daniel said gently. "If you need anything, you can call me. My room is across the hall." Lyra nodded slowly, her silver eyes flickering with nervousness. She stepped inside the room and placed her bag on the bed. When she turned back to the doorway, Daniel gave her a small smile, trying to show that he wasn't angry, annoyed, or bothered. He just didn't want her to feel afraid. "I'll let you rest," he said quietly. "Good night, Lyra." She opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She simply dipped her head. Daniel stepped away and closed the door gently behind him. In his own room, Daniel lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. Everything felt strange. He was used to silence and loneliness. He worked during the day, ate simple meals at night, and slept early. That was his life. But now there was someone else in the house. A frightened girl who didn't even know him. A girl depending on him. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. He didn't know why the authorities chose him. Maybe they didn't have many options. Maybe she needed someone calm. Someone safe. "I hope I can help her," he whispered to himself. He tried to sleep, but his mind was restless. Every small noise in the house made him sit up, wondering if she was okay. Meanwhile, in the guest room, Lyra sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't lie down. She didn't even move much. Her hands were tightly woven together, and her feet hung just above the floor. She looked around the room slowly. The soft lamp light cast warm colors on the walls. It felt strange. Too warm. Too quiet. She was used to the cold lights of the facility she came from. She was used to guards shouting, doors slamming, and long hallways that echoed with the cries of children who had no one left. This place that felt unreal. She reached for her bag and opened it carefully. Inside were only 3 things: a small blanket, a worn-out wooden toy shaped like a bird, and a folded piece of fabric with symbols from her home colony. She held the toy in her hands. It reminded her of someone she lost. Her throat tightened, and she blinked away tears. Not tonight. Not here. Not in front of someone who might not want her. She curled up slowly on the bed, hugging her tiny toy to her chest. Her silver eyes stayed open, watching the door, afraid it might open suddenly. Her breathing was slow and careful, like someone who had spent years trying not to make noise. About an hour later, Daniel heard something soft. A small sound. A tiny sniff. He rose from his bed and walked quietly to her door. He didn't want to scare her, so he knocked gently, barely more than a tap. "Lyra, are you okay?" There was no answer. Daniel hesitated, then slowly opened the door. He peeked inside. Lyra was lying on the bed, her back curled toward the wall. But he could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying, trying very hard to stay quiet. Daniel's heart sank. He remembered how scared she looked when the officer left. He remembered the fear in her eyes when she stepped into the house. He stepped inside slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Lyra," he said softly. She froze. Daniel knelt beside the bed, keeping a small distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "You're safe here," he whispered. "I know this place is strange. I know you don't know me. But no one is going to hurt you. Not in this house." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned her head toward him. Her silver eyes were wet with tears, and she held the wooden toy tightly. Daniel spoke again, even softer. "You don't have to be afraid. Not tonight. Not ever again, if I can help it." A long silence filled the room. Then Lyra whispered, "You don't send me back?" Daniel shook his head firmly.
"No."
"Never. You're staying here. As long as you need." Her eyes widened slightly, surprised, confused, and relieved all at the same time. She wiped her tears with her small hand, her breathing shaky. Daniel stood up slowly. "If you want, I can leave the door open a little. It might help you feel less alone." Lyra nodded. He opened the door halfway, letting the warm hallway light enter the room. "Good night, Lyra." She whispered back, "Good night, Daniel." This time, she lay down properly. The blanket covered her tiny body, and her toy rested beside her pillow. Within a few minutes, she fell asleep, still fragile, still scared, but no longer alone. Daniel watched from the hallway for a moment, making sure she was comfortable. Then he returned to his room, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. It had been a long night, but a meaningful one. And although neither of them knew it yet, this was only the beginning of a bond that would change both their lives forever. Morning sunlight slowly entered Daniel's small house, warming the wooden floors and filling the rooms with a soft glow. Daniel woke early, as he always did, but today felt different. For the first time in years, he wasn't the only one living there. A young alien girl was sleeping in the room across the hall, quiet, scared, and unsure of the world around her. Daniel stretched, put on his work clothes, and stepped into the hallway. He moved quietly. He didn't want to frighten her. The door to her room was still half open, just as she preferred it last night. He peeked inside. Lyra lay curled under the blanket, her small hands loosely holding her wooden toy bird. She looked peaceful, but also tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in a long time until now. Daniel smiled gently. He went to the kitchen and made breakfast, simple toast, eggs, and warm tea. The smell filled the house, carrying a feeling of comfort he didn't realize he missed. A few minutes later, he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. He turned and saw Lyra standing at the kitchen doorway. She looked small and shy, her silver eyes blinking at the bright morning light. "Good morning," Daniel said kindly. "Did you sleep okay?" Lyra hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes, thank you." Her voice was soft, almost fragile, but clearer than last night. Daniel pulled out a chair. "Come eat. You must be hungry." She walked carefully toward the table as if afraid to step in the wrong place. She sat quietly, hands folded on her lap, waiting for permission. Daniel placed a plate in front of her. Lyra stared at the food, not with hunger, but with uncertainty. "You can eat," Daniel said gently. "It's for you." Still, she didn't touch the plate. "Instead," she whispered, I'll work first." Daniel blinked in surprise. "Work? No, no. You don't have to work." She looked confused. "No clean? No wash? No serve?" Daniel's heart tightened. What kind of place had she lived in before? "You don't have to do anything," he said softly. "You're just a child. You're here to rest, to be safe,
To eat.
to sleep, and to be okay." Lyra stared at him with wide eyes, as if she couldn't understand this. As if kindness itself was a strange, unfamiliar thing. Slowly, she reached for the food and took a small bite. Her eyes widened. "It's a worm." Daniel smiled. "It's supposed to be." She kept eating very slowly at first, then a little faster when she felt safe. When she finished, she whispered again. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Daniel said. He started cleaning the kitchen, and Lyra rose from her seat as if to help, but Daniel gently stopped her. "It's okay. I've got it." She froze, unsure. No one expects you to work here, he said. You're not a servant. You're not a burden. You're a guest. She didn't speak, but he could see she was trying to understand these strange new rules. After breakfast, Daniel decided Lyra needed a small tour of the house. He showed her the living room, the backyard, the tiny garden, and the storage shed filled with tools. This is your home too, Daniel said. You can go anywhere you like. Lyra stayed close to him, her steps small and cautious. You trust me? Daniel nodded. Of course. She looked down at her feet. At the center, we were not allowed to walk freely. Daniel felt his chest tighten again. Whoever had cared for her before hadn't really cared at all. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not at the center anymore. You're here. And here, you're safe. Lyra looked up, and for the first time, her eyes softened, not with fear, but with something new. Something close to hope. Later in the morning, Daniel needed to do chores outside. He chopped small pieces of wood, checked the garden soil, and swept the yard. Lyra followed quietly, watching him. You don't have to stand the whole time, Daniel said with a small laugh. You can sit. But she shook her head. I like to watch. So he let her. After a while, Daniel noticed her shivering slightly. The morning wind was cool. He walked inside and returned with a soft scarf. Lyra stepped back, thinking he was going to scold her. Instead, he wrapped the scarf gently around her shoulders. She froze. This will keep you warm, he said simply. Lyra's eyes widened. You give this to me? Yes, Daniel said. Because you need it. She looked like she wanted to cry again, but she held it in. Her small hands touched the scarf, feeling its softness. No one ever gave me something, she whispered. Daniel's heart felt heavy and warm at the same time. Then I'm happy to be the first. By afternoon, Lyra started to relax just enough to explore the garden a little. She touched the leaves gently, amazed by their colors. She crouched next to a flower and tilted her head, studying it as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. Daniel watched from a distance. Every small movement she made showed how new this freedom was for her, how unreal it felt to simply be outside without fear. When she looked up at him, she smiled, a tiny, nervous, but real smile. And Daniel smiled back. As the sun began to set, Lyra came to sit beside him on the porch steps. You are kind, she said suddenly. Daniel blinked. I'm just doing what anyone should do. She shook her head. No. Not anyone. Only you. He looked at her, surprised by her seriousness. You teach me kindness, she whispered. I did not know what it felt like. Daniel didn't know what to say. He only placed his hand gently on her shoulder, and she didn't pull away. For the first time since she arrived, she felt safe enough to lean slightly against him. It was a small gesture, but Daniel knew it meant everything. And as the stars appeared above them, both understood that their bond was slowly forming, built not from duty, but from simple, honest kindness. For the next few days, life inside Daniel's small home slowly settled into a quiet rhythm. Lyra began to understand that she didn't have to be afraid all the time. She learned that the door stayed unlocked, so she could step outside. She learned she could eat until she was full. She learned she could sleep without fear of being woken by shouting or orders. But outside the house, things were different. Daniel didn't live very far from the village. Sometimes he walked there to buy supplies or bring in paperwork from the local council. On the fourth morning after Lyra arrived, he needed to go again. He grabbed his jacket, some documents, and a small bag for food. Lyra, he said gently, I'm going to the village. Do you want to come with me? You don't have to. It's your choice. Lyra froze. Being in public felt frightening. People staring, whispering, judging. She remembered how other adults had looked at her in the government center. Cold eyes, sharp voices, fast steps. But Daniel's voice was different. He wasn't forcing her. He wasn't ordering her. After a long moment, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. Stay close to me. If anything feels uncomfortable, tell me and we'll leave. She nodded again, holding the ends of the scarf he had given her. The walk to the village took about 15 minutes. The path was simple, lined with small plants and dusty stones. Lyra stayed close to Daniel's side, her steps small and careful. As they reached the main road, a few villagers noticed them, and that was when the whispering began. "That's the human, right? I heard the authorities assigned him a child from the alien wards." She looked scared. Why did they give her to him? Maybe he requested her. Lyra lowered her head, gripping her scarf tightly. Her silver eyes darted nervously from one person to another. Their stares felt sharp, like tiny knives pricking her skin. Daniel heard the whispers too. He felt anger rising in his chest, not at the people, but at how their words made Lyra shrink and tremble. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're okay," he whispered. "I'm here." She nodded slightly, but her breathing was shaky. At the market, Daniel picked up fresh bread and some vegetables. He tried to act normal, but everywhere he walked, people stared at Lyra. A human woman selling fruit watched Lyra with surprised eyes. "Daniel," she said softly, "is that child yours?" Lyra stiffened. Daniel shook his head calmly.
"No."
"She's under my care for now. That's all." The woman's eyes softened with sympathy. "Poor thing, she looks like she's been through a lot." Lyra blinked, confused by the gentle tone. Not everyone seemed hostile. Some people were simply curious. But other voices were harsher. An older man muttered loudly, "Humans shouldn't take in alien wards. It causes trouble." Another said, "The authorities dumped her on him. That's not fair." Lyra's breathing became quicker, almost panicked. Daniel crouched beside her. "Lyra, look at me." She slowly lifted her eyes. "You're safe," he said firmly. "What they say doesn't matter. If you want to leave, we will leave right now." Lyra hesitated. Her hands squeezed the scarf. Then she whispered, "No, I stay with you." Daniel nodded proudly. She was brave, far braver than she realized. When Daniel finished shopping, he needed to stop by the local council office to drop off a report. He didn't know that this visit would stir even more attention. As he entered the building, 2 council workers looked up sharply. "That must be her," one whispered. Lyra felt the familiar fear rise in her chest. The council workers wore the same uniforms as the people who once controlled her life. Her feet froze. Her body trembled. Daniel noticed immediately. He knelt beside her again. "Lyra, do you want to wait outside?" She shook her head fiercely.
"No."
"I go with you." Daniel smiled gently. She was growing stronger. They approached the desk. One worker leaned forward. "Is this the assigned ward?" Daniel nodded.
"Yes."
"Her name is Lyra." The worker studied the girl with a strange mix of curiosity and pity. "She seems attached to you already." Daniel didn't know how to answer. He simply placed his hand on Lyra's shoulder again, and she leaned slightly toward him. The worker continued, "Many villagers have been asking about her. The council wants to make sure you understand the situation." "I understand enough," Daniel replied calmly. "Good," the worker said. "Because people talk." Daniel's expression hardened. "Let them talk." Lyra looked up at him, surprised, touched, and confused. No one had ever spoken for her before. When they finally left the village and returned to the quiet path home, Lyra let out a long breath. She looked exhausted, not from walking, but from the weight of all those eyes and whispers. Daniel slowed his pace. "Are you okay?" Lyra nodded weakly. "They don't like me." "That's not true," Daniel said gently. "They just don't understand you yet. But they stare like I am wrong." Daniel stopped walking and knelt so he could look her in the eyes. "Listen, Lyra," he said softly. "You are not wrong. You are not a problem. And you are not a burden." Her eyes shined with emotion. "People whisper because they don't know your story. They don't know how strong you are. They don't know how brave you've been." Lyra's voice shook. "You believe I am brave?" Daniel smiled. "I know you are." She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "I stay with you always." Daniel felt something warm bloom in his chest. "You're welcome here for as long as you want," he said. As they walked home, Lyra stayed closer to Daniel than ever before. "Yes," the village whispered. "Yes," people stared. But for the first time in her life, Lyra wasn't facing the world alone. She had someone beside her, someone who saw her not as an assignment, but as a person. And that small truth changed everything. The next morning, the house felt quiet again, but not the same heavy silence from the first day. Now it felt calm, like soft air after storm. Lyra woke up slowly, blinking at the soft morning light. She sat on her bed for a long moment, touching the scarf Daniel gave her. It felt warm and safe around her shoulders. When she stepped into the hallway, she heard Daniel cooking breakfast in the kitchen. The gentle sounds of clinking plates and sizzling food made her heart feel lighter. Daniel looked up. "Good morning, Lyra." She gave a small smile. "Good morning." She was speaking more now. Still softly, still carefully, but her voice sounded less afraid. He placed a bowl of warm porridge in front of her. "Eat as much as you like." Lyra picked up her spoon, then paused. Her eyes looked distant, thoughtful. Daniel noticed. "Something on your mind?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. She stared at the steam rising from the bowl. Then she whispered, "Yesterday the village people stared too much." Daniel sat across from her. "I know. I'm sorry. It was scary," she admitted. "But you stayed with me. Thank you." Daniel smiled gently. "I'll always stay with you." Lyra lowered her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly, as if there was something else she wanted to say, but didn't know how. Daniel remained patient. He didn't push her, didn't rush her. He simply waited. After a long silence, she took a deep breath. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Daniel said softly. "Anything." She lifted her head. Her silver eyes were wet, but not from fear. This time, it was from a deep, heavy memory finally trying to reach the surface. "Before the center," she whispered, "I lived with my mother." Daniel's breath caught. Until now, she had never spoken about her family. Lyra continued slowly, as if every word was difficult. She worked in the mines. It was dangerous. She always came home tired. But she smiled when she saw me. A tiny smile appeared on her face, sad but warm. "She made me a wooden bird," Lyra said, touching the little toy she always carried. "She carved it for my birthday." Daniel nodded gently. "It's beautiful." Lyra's fingers tightened around the toy. One day, she didn't come home. They said there was an accident, a collapse. Daniel felt a wave of sadness wash over him. "Lyra, I'm so sorry." Lyra blinked, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I waited for her the whole night. I slept by the door. I thought she would come, but she never did." Her voice cracked. "At the center, no one talked to me. They kept us in rooms. They shouted a lot. If someone cried, they punished them." She wiped her tears quickly, as if crying itself was forbidden. Daniel reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You can cry here," he said softly. "No one will punish you." Her tears fell faster. "I thought I did something wrong," she whispered. "I thought that's why they sent me away. I thought I made people angry. I didn't know what I did." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not then. Not ever." Lyra swallowed hard, breathing shakily. "My mother used to hold me when I was scared," she whispered. "But after she was gone, no one held me again." Daniel understood. She wasn't asking for anything. She was simply remembering the only warmth she had ever known. He stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her. Slowly, very slowly, he opened his arms, giving her space to choose. Lyra stared at him, trembling. No one had offered her comfort since her mother. The memories came rushing back, the warmth of arms around her, the feeling of being loved. After a long moment, she leaned forward and let herself fall into Daniel's embrace. It was gentle,
Soft. Safe.
She cried quietly, her face pressed against his shoulder. Daniel held her carefully, as if she were something fragile but precious. "You're safe," he whispered. "You're not alone anymore." Lyra sobbed, her small hands gripping his shirt. "Thank you, Daniel, thank you, for not leaving me." "I'll never leave," he said firmly. Her cries slowly turned into soft breaths. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but calmer.
You can always talk to me, Daniel said.
About anything. Lyra nodded. It feels lighter now. Daniel smiled. I'm glad. She wiped her face again. Daniel, can I ask something? Of course. Do you want me here? Daniel didn't even hesitate. Yes, Lyra. Very much. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise. Really? Really, he said with a warm smile. You bring life into this home. You belong here. For the first time, a real, clear smile spread across her face.
Not shy.
Not scared. A true smile. The rest of the day passed gently. They worked together in the garden. They cooked lunch. Lyra even laughed once when Daniel accidentally dropped a spoon and looked embarrassed. That evening, as the sun set, Lyra sat beside him on the porch steps again, just like the day before. But this time, she leaned against him without hesitation. For the first time since her mother died, she felt a sense of family again. And Daniel felt something too, a protective warmth he had never expected. A promise he didn't speak but felt deep inside. He would protect her. He would care for her. He would make sure she never felt abandoned again. And Lyra, for the first time in her life, believed that kindness could last. For the next few days, the human man, Daniel, tried to keep life calm for Lyra. After the attack in the marketplace, she stayed close to him, always alert, always watching the shadows. She did not say much, but she no longer hid behind doors. She walked beside him now, trusting him more than anyone else in the colony. Daniel wished things could stay peaceful, but deep inside, he knew life rarely worked that way. The authorities had sent Lyra to him for a reason, one they had still not explained. And the attacker in the market had clearly known who she was. Something bigger was happening, something dangerous. He just didn't know what. One quiet morning, Daniel was fixing the small fence behind his home. Lyra sat nearby on a flat stone, holding a basket of tools and watching him. She liked helping, even with small things. It gave her a purpose, a sense of belonging that she had never felt before. Hand me the small wrench, Daniel said gently. Lyra passed it to him immediately. Is this the right one?
Yes.
Perfect. He smiled. She looked down shyly, her face turning slightly blue, the alien color of embarrassment. Suddenly, both of them froze. A loud humming sound filled the air, a sharp mechanical whine carried by the wind. It grew louder and louder until the ground itself seemed to vibrate. Lyra's eyes widened with fear. Daniel, they're back. A transport ship hovered above the village, its lights bright against the sky. It lowered slowly toward the open field near the houses. Doors opened along its side, and several authority officers stepped out, more than before. Their uniforms flashed with official colors, and their weapons were clearly visible. Daniel clenched his jaw. He remembered how they had delivered Lyra like a package, offering no explanation. He still had no idea why she had been placed in his care, or why someone had tried to harm her. Lyra stood behind him, trembling. Please don't let them take me. He put a steady hand on her shoulder. I won't let anything happen to you. Two officers approached the fence. Daniel stepped forward, blocking their view of the girl behind him. The lead officer, a tall alien with silver markings on his face, spoke calmly. Human Daniel, we're here to speak with you. Daniel crossed his arms. If you've come to take her away, you should have said so before sending her here in the first place. The officer shook his head.
No.
This time is different. Daniel sighed heavily. Then explain. I deserve the truth. She deserves the truth. The officer nodded and looked past Daniel, directly at Lyra. Child, may I speak to you? Lyra stepped out slowly, still holding Daniel's sleeve. The officer lowered his voice. We discovered the attacker in the marketplace was part of a group searching for you. They are not criminals. They are your former caretakers. Lyra's breath caught. My caretakers? Daniel turned to her in surprise. I thought you said you were alone. I thought I was, she whispered. I don't remember them. The officer continued. When you were very young, your people sent you away during a dangerous political conflict. You were placed under government protection. Recently, those who cared for you returned, and they have been searching across colonies to find you. Daniel felt a strange ache in his chest. So, she has family? The officer nodded.
Yes.
But they lacked the proper documents. That is why they approached her in secret. Their methods were wrong, but their intentions were not. Lyra shook her head slowly, tears building in her bright eyes. I don't know them. I don't remember any of them. I only know Daniel. Daniel swallowed hard. That simple sentence hit him like a heavy stone. The officer stepped forward gently. We are not taking her away. We only came to inform you of the situation, and to warn you. Others may still be searching. Until things settle, we ask that you continue to keep her safe. Daniel stared at the officer, shocked. You're asking me to protect her?
Yes.
You are the only one she trusts, and you have already shown more care than any official facility could. Lyra grabbed Daniel's hand tightly. The officer added, We will place guards around the village for a few weeks. But she must stay with you. Daniel looked down at Lyra.
If you want to stay, you can.
I will protect you. Lyra nodded quickly, clinging to him. I want to stay. The officers turned and returned to their transport ship. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted into the sky, shrinking into a small, before disappearing completely. Silence returned. Lyra finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Daniel, thank you.
For what? He asked.
For choosing me. He felt something warm grow in his chest. Something strong. Something protective. You're not alone anymore, he said quietly. Not as long as I'm here. Lyra leaned her head against his arm, comforted. The danger wasn't over. New questions had opened. But for the moment, they were still together, and that meant everything. The days after the authorities' visit were quieter, but Daniel and Lyra knew they couldn't let their guard down. Lyra stayed close to him at all times, learning to trust that he would keep her safe. She smiled more often now, though the shadow of fear still lingered. Daniel noticed every small change, her laughter, her curiosity about the garden, and her willingness to help with little chores around the house. One morning, as sunlight filtered softly through the windows, Daniel looked at Lyra sitting at the small table, drawing pictures in a notebook he had found for her. She drew the house, the garden, the wooden bird, and even herself standing next to Daniel. Her silver eyes sparkled with pride as she showed him her work. You drew us, Daniel said, smiling. That's wonderful. Lyra's face turned slightly blue with embarrassment, but she nodded. I like here. I like us. Daniel felt warmth bloom in his chest. He realized that she had begun to see him not just as her protector, but as someone she could depend on, a human who truly cared. You've come a long way, Lyra, he said softly. You're brave, strong, and kind. And you deserve happiness. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had never been told something like that before. She opened her mouth to speak but stopped, unsure how to respond. Daniel simply smiled at her, giving her the courage to try. I want to be brave, like you, she whispered. I want to stay here. You can, he said, reaching out to squeeze her small hand. You belong here with me, and no one can take that away. Her lips curved into a genuine smile, brighter than any he had seen before. It was a smile that carried trust, hope, and the first sense of true belonging she had ever known. Days passed, and the village slowly began to accept Lyra as part of Daniel's life. Those who had whispered and stared before now kept a respectful distance. Some even offered small gifts or greetings. But it wasn't the villagers who mattered most. It was the bond between Lyra and Daniel that defined her world now. One afternoon, Daniel took her to the garden, showing her how to plant seeds. Lyra listened carefully, mimicking his movements, planting each seed with care. She paused and looked up at him. Daniel, you always help me, she said softly. No one helped me before. You're right, Daniel said. No one did. But I will. Every day if you let me. Lyra's silver eyes shone. She finally understood something she had never known, that someone could care for her not out of duty, or orders, or politics, but simply because they wanted to. Because they saw her worth. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel and Lyra sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of red and gold. Lyra leaned against him, feeling safe and calm for the first time in years. "I like this place," she whispered. "I like being with you." Daniel nodded. "I like it too. You've changed my life, Lyra. You've taught me something I didn't know I needed, how to care for someone completely, without hesitation." She tilted her head, curious. "I changed your life?" "Yes," Daniel said, smiling. "Your presence, your trust, your courage, it made me see things differently. I am a better person because of you." Lyra blinked, absorbing the words. She had never imagined that anyone could care for her so completely, or that she could make a difference in someone else's life. "I want to stay brave," she said softly. I want to be like you." Daniel placed his hand gently on her head. "You already are brave, Lyra. You've survived things no one should ever endure. You've learned to trust again. That's bravery. That's strength. And kindness, what you feel inside, will guide you for the rest of your life." Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the truth of his words settle into her heart. She finally understood. She was no longer a scared child sent from the authorities, no longer a ward of the colony. She was Lyra, free, safe, and cherished. She had a home, a friend, and someone who would always believe in her. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Lyra whispered one final thought for the day. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." Daniel smiled, looking at the glowing night sky.
"No, Lyra. Thank you for trusting me.
You've changed my life forever." And in that quiet, peaceful night, two souls, one human, one alien, shared a bond stronger than fear, stronger than the authority that once controlled her, and stronger than the whispers of the village. A bond built on kindness, trust, and love. From that day forward, Daniel and Lyra faced the future together. No matter what challenges came their way, one truth remained. Kindness had changed everything and would continue to change their lives forever.